This is part 2 of our tutorial on our payroll report spreadsheet in Excel, and we're ready to put in formulas. And the problem with figuring out standard pay is whether or not the employee has worked more than 40 hours. So we need Excel to make a decision for us. So let's think how we would do this first for our first 3 rows. So this employee worked 35 hours. That has no overtime. So he or she is earning $10 per hour for 35 hours. So we expect $350 of standard pay. The second employee worked exactly 40 hours, no overtime. So we would expect standard pay of $400 and 0 overtime pay. Our third employee does have 5 overtime hours. So for the first 40 hours, we would take 40 times 10. So the standard pay should be 400, but this employee will have overtime pay in the next column. So we would take 45 minus 40 to see that there are 5 overtime hours. And then those 5 hours, the employee would earn 1.5 times $10. So we know that 1.5 times 10 is $15 an hour. So 5 extra hours at $15 an hour. The overtime pay in this cell should turn out to be 75. So we'll be able to use these first 3 rows to see if our formulas are working. So this is the first time you're seeing a logical formula. Formulas, when you come back to them, you'll see that they always start with equal signs. But to begin with, Excel will do most of the work for us. So I want to put a formula in cell F7, and our formulas, not surprisingly, there's a tab that says formulas. Excel is used to do all kinds of arithmetic. And you can see what I mean. Look at all these pull-down menus. So in your math, algebra classes, trig classes, you might do some spreadsheets. Here we're doing a business example. And right now we want to say if something happens, if the employee worked more than 40 hours. So we're going to choose the logical pull-down menu, and we want to choose if. And you'll learn about some of these other logic operators later, or just by experimenting. So we get this dialog box, and notice our formula starts with the word if, and now we need to say if what? Well, did they work more than 40 hours? So our logical test is to compare the hours worked to 40. So I'm going to click on the cell is if this cell, the hours worked, is greater than 40, then we know that the worker will get overtime pay. So if they worked more than 40 hours, then they get their hourly wage for the first 40 hours. So we're only worried about standard pay first. So even if they worked 45 hours, the 40 hours at the hourly wage, I click on the cell. They get $10 an hour in this case. And what if they didn't work 40 hours? Well, this employee only worked 35, so we don't want to pay them for 40 hours. So now we click on the number of hours they actually worked, and we multiply by, and I want to shift here to get an asterisk. Multiply is the asterisk symbol. And we want to multiply by their hourly wage. And I don't want to type 10 because that's not the same for everybody. I want to click on the cell so that when we copy the formula, it will be different for each employee. And now let's click OK and see what happens here. And I can copy this formula all the way down the column, and then we can see whether it worked the way we expected it to. So yes, this employee should only get $350. This employee only earns $400. The next employee, we're not finished yet. The next employee gets $400 for the first 40 hours. We still have to put in his overtime pay in this column. So we're only figuring out the amount for standard pay in this column. So now let's repeat something similar in the overtime pay column. How are we going to fill this one out? Well, we've got to make a decision. if they worked more than 40 hours. So we're going to do a logical if. If, and our logic test is if the number of hours they worked, so I click on the cell, so it's dynamic. If the number of hours is greater than 40, then when it is true that their hours are more than 40, then we owe them some extra pay. So our formula is to give them 1.5 times their hourly wage. So instead of earning $10, they would get $15 an hour. And then we have to say how many hours did they work more than 40. So we get that 1.5 times their wage only for the number of hours that they worked more than 40. So that would be their hours worked minus 40. And this is confusing for some students because they say, well, this guy doesn't get any overtime pay. And that will be true. If they didn't work more than 40 hours, that comes under the false condition and we put a 0. So that will take care of the problem. So we're getting 1.5 times the hourly wage for every hour over 40, or if they didn't work more than 40 hours, they get no overtime pay. So let's click OK and see if it works. So we knew this person got no overtime. Let's copy down the formula and let's see if it worked the way we expected. So this person worked 5 extra hours. So 1.5 times their wage, there was our 75. This employee worked 10 extra hours, and their time and a half times 1.5 times the 45. Okay, so this person worked 1 extra hour, and time and a half, wouldn't it be $75 an hour for that 1 extra hour? So you can see that they check out if you put in some easy numbers that you can verify. Okay, what's left to do here? Well, this is where we got to say, oh, I can't figure out their total pay yet because I forgot that I owe them some commission. If they sold more than their target goal, remember we're going to let them keep 5% of that value. So we need to insert another column. So I'm going to click on column H, and I want to insert a column. So I go to the home screen and I look for insert, and I want to insert a column. And there's other ways to do that again. And this is going to be our commission. This is going to be our commission column. And I want that column to be a little bit wider. I have to hit return first to get out of that cell. And that. And you might not want it to be that wide, so you could make that font a little bit smaller. But I'm okay with that column width. Now, how do we figure out commission? Everybody doesn't get commission, so we have to make a logical function again. So we go to formulas, and they only get commission if, so we're back to our if, and what's our logical test? They only get a commission, let me get this a little bit out of the way up here. They only get a commission if their sales total, so look at where my cursor is, I want to get the sales total. If their sales total is more than their target goal, if their sales total is more than their target goal, then we owe them commission. And what do they get to keep? They get to keep 5%, so that's 0.05 multiplied by, and now I need parentheses for order of operations. I need to figure out how much higher this sales is than the target. So don't type in the numbers, click on the cell. So I want to find out how much this sales total minus sign, hit the minus sign, is higher than this target goal. And then I close the parenthesis. So do you see what B7 minus C7 would be? Washington sold $12,000 more than his or her goal. So he or she is going to get to keep 5% of that amount. What if it's false? What if the sales total was not greater than the goal? Then they get 0 commission. And we click OK. And we copy and drag the formula down. And then we can look to see. It looks like I had a pattern here. So 4 of my employees exceeded their target goal. And then how come Johnson gets nothing as a commission? Because he or she just matched the goal. And then look at now the sales totals are smaller. So it worked exactly as we would expect. Okay, now we've got a simpler formula and you've seen what to do when we did tables. How do we figure out the total that we should pay Washington? We just need to add up the standard pay plus the overtime pay plus the commission. And we could enter that ourselves since it's only 3 things. If you type the formula yourself instead of using the menu, you make sure that every formula starts with an equal sign. And we could click on the cell. Standard pay is in F7. And then I can type a plus sign. Only one of them. That was by mistake. F7 plus, click on the next cell, G7 for the overtime, plus H7 for the commission. And then when we hit enter, it gives us 950. And notice when we click on that cell that we can always go back and see the formula. And if you made a mistake, you can just highlight, click and type over the top of your mistake. So you could easily just add those 3 things. That's easy enough. But I'm going to delete that formula because what if it wasn't 3 things we were adding up? What if it was 13 columns? There's probably an easier way, and that would be to use the sum function. So this Greek letter sigma, this big E shape, is the Greek letter sigma, and it's used in mathematics when we add things up. So we're going to pull down the menu here for auto sum, and you've seen these before. In tables, we already saw the sum formula. So I'm going to choose to add, and notice that Excel takes a wild guess at what do you want to add together. It thinks we might want to add together this entire column or this entire row of values, but we don't. We only want to add these 3. So I'm just going to click and drag, and notice the formula is F7 colon H7. So it's adding all of the cells from F7 to H7. And notice the formula puts an equal sign first. And we hit enter. And once we did that pattern, Excel knows to copy it and do the same. Whoops, let me get on that cell. Copy it to the other employees. And again, you could click in any cell and notice what this one's doing. It's adding up the sum of cells F14 to H14. So it changes the formula as it goes down the rows. Well, we've already done a lot of features, but I don't think I'm ready to print this report because I think I could make it look a lot nicer. And I think we would also want to do some more at the bottom, figuring out the total amount of money. We might want to put some dollar signs in some of the columns. And I think I want to put some borders, some lines, maybe use some more color and shading. So that's what's yet to go in part 3 video.